Hello. How you
Hello.
doing, Rosalind? I just saw you retweeted this announcement. Congratulations on your first retweet. I think that's a big
Thank
deal.
you. It's my first tweet. Period. Full stop.
Is it? Wow.
And I have 8 followers.
Look at you. You're coming up. Those are numbers. You're going to be a good Twitter user, I think. Which is, I don't know if that's a insult or a compliment.
It feels like
It
an
probably
insult
is.
coming
Let's just
from
take.
you.
What's this Twitter thing? I thought we were doing an X
Sorry,
space.
I don't think it's actually called X. It's pronounced some other way. You know. Well, it may be spelled
Something like
X, but pronounced Twitter, like Prince. You know what I mean?
Okay.
People don't know this. Chase, welcome to our
Thank you.
Twitter space. I think we're pro Twitter space. We're pro X space. SpaceX? Holy shit! Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna get bad.
I just figured.
Yeah, rockets are pretty interesting.
The X space. No, we're not. We're actually. I'm anti SpaceX. I think space is like there's a reason why people aren't there. Like we should just stay out of it. That's my take.
The lack of air is part of it.
Yeah,
probably.
but it's also like it was made that way for a reason. You know, just don't push it. That's what I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a sign.
Okay.
It's a sign. Might be a minority position. I don't want to speak for Roslet here, who's, as we know, a space supremacist.
I'm a space head, a known space head.
All right, Chase. Welcome to the space, and for everybody that's listening, I want to welcome you. And we're going to spend about 45 minutes here getting to know the Vaporware squad. So there's some other dudes here. Some other guys here who are. Let me know if I should. I think we're going to talk a little bit. Those of you that are requesting to speak, I need to run my mouth for a little bit, get out of my system, and listen to Chase talk for a little bit. And then we can get into questions for Vaporware and the rest of the team. So, Chase, I did not go to reassembly, but I've heard good things, and I've heard a lot of good things about your presentation in particular. So, I was wondering if you could just kind of like walk us through. You know, you don't have to pretend like I wasn't there because I wasn't. So, walk me through kind of what you guys presented, and in so doing, kind of introduce Vaporware to a lot of people, and go from there.
Perfect. So what we presented in Wyoming was kind of two things. It was a story about how we think Web 2 came to dominate desktop publishing and just like desktop apps in general. Like why did these things called web apps perform financially, economically, so much better than the previous version of software that we had.
Which was what? Just I mean, I don't want to jump in too much, but
which was like
that, actually. That's interesting.
You download, you go to your local Best Buy, you pick out a CD, you bring that CD home, you put it into your machine, and you've got software now. And that was the predominant way of getting software for a very long time. And then the internet came along, and this smart guy named Paul Graham, who was a Lisper, decided that rather than distributing software through a disk, they would distribute their software by running it on their own servers and giving their customers access to that software.
So was that a Paul Graham joint, huh? I didn't know that. Look at him.
Paul, ViaWeb, I think was, I think you could argue whether ViaWeb or Hotmail was actually the first client-server based like SaaS product. But I think Paul Graham and ViaWeb have a reasonable claim on that distinction.
That's I learned something new. I thought I knew everything, but here we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There were like clearly technical improvements to doing this. Like there were just like new categories of software that could be created because of this. But what Paul reflected on sort of at the end of the internet bubble was the real killer feature to this was capital efficiency. The teams could be much smaller. The software could be iterated on faster with lower effort. Like you weren't pushing for a year to release a new CD only to find that there were innumerable bugs in it. And because the sort of capital efficiency of creating and distributing software, you had a global audience from day one. Because it was so much better, it became very attractive to investors, to existing capital.
Yeah.
And the returns could be larger, faster. The teams that required the investment were smaller. And so for any fund of a given size, what ended up happening is that you could make more sort of investments across software as an industry by investing in web app companies.
Okay.
And this I think is basically like the key insight that Paul had in this essay that I referenced called The Other Road Ahead. And I think that this is like the key sort of lesson that we as a sort of like budding new computing device type need to learn from Paul. I think to be fair, like blockchains have had their own version of this. I don't think that people have written about it quite so clearly yet, but there's similar kinds of monetization distribution mechanics that have been created for that computing device that are net new.
But just a second. So by blockchains have had this, you mean that blockchains also kind of innovated a new distribution / monetization model?
Yep, okay. That's right. Yep. How do you fund the development of runtimes of software running within those runtimes? Like blockchains basically have a new system for doing that, and it was different. It was different than what we saw with the original web apps in the 90s and early 2000s. But I think that this is like one of the key things that a community like ours has to wrestle with, is that these things are never just about technology. They're about monetization models. They're about the markets that you're targeting, and it's about the distribution channel that you're building your product to take advantage of. And those were the lessons that I took away from sort of this body of writing. So that was part of the presentation, is like just getting people acquainted with this.
So I have a quick question about that, because like I think I wonder if you mentioned, I mean, I'm not sure if I would use monetization and financialization differently in some ways. Blockchains are kind of interesting in that it kind of like all mashes together, but like, there's certain ways in which you, let's say, capture value, to use the nice euphemism. You rent seek on your software as a Web 2 person, right? And that's one thing, and I would call that monetization. And then there's also financialization, which is that, like, essentially, which you brought something up which I'd never really thought about, which is kind of like Web 2 changed what like investing in software looked like, right? Because because of all the things that you brought up. So I'm wondering if I'm right in like in that distinction, or if you think that's kind of like a false distinction. That blockchain.
I think it's a little bit of a false distinction, actually, right? Okay. Like monetization is how much you charge, when, and using what sort of medium. It's like those three things that determines your monetization model. Are you charging up front? Are you a freemium? Are you charging only when they try to use a certain feature? Are you accepting credit cards, or do you accept crypto? Like all those things that goes into monetization. And blockchains are interesting because they monetize in a very roundabout way. Like they don't charge, like the way that they charge is very indirect. But I think that still is like, that is their monetization model, is this like indirect financialization of the underlying network. And the way that grows is sort of the way that they fund like development of it. So I like the thing that makes blockchains weird, and just like tokenomic stuff weird in general, is that I think you're right. It does collapse this like these two worlds that we previously thought were a little bit more separate, which is like the monetization for the infrastructure or the software itself, and the way that it gets the way that it gets capitalized. And blockchains merge those two things to a very large degree.
Okay. All right. That's really interesting. All right. So continue on your tour of
cool
open source software stuff.
So That was like background that I thought, I hadn't heard talked about very much within Urbit, or even just like more generally. Like this is a part of computing history that I don't think gets as much attention as it probably should.
Yeah.
And the reason to be aware of this is that we as a community looking to bring a new computing device to market need to be strategic about the way that we think about channel and model and how we're constructing products using this computer to take advantage of those specific features. And in particular, right, like the challenge that we have here is not just launching a computer, but it's launching a computer into an existing market that has very strong network effects in place already. These Web 2 giants have basically, they have created an engineering discipline out of network effects. And we're not going to be as good at as they are at this. So we, part of the thesis at Vaporware is that we need a more powerful effect. Like we need some effect that can outcompete their network effects. And we think that sort of free open source software development is the instantiation of a effect that's more powerful than just these like network level lock-ins that these companies have. We think that by providing incentives for peers to create and distribute and mod and fork software and making it so that those things are sort of like monetized and clearly valuable, you can like abstract out one level. We're no longer competing across, individual software verticals. We're now competing sort of for the most performant software ecosystem. And so like the channels of software distribution, the way that we're monetizing, we're basically trying to design a system at Vaporware that can like capture that intuition and automate it. And so we're doing this sort of using Urbit and blockchains, and we've got some early examples of it. The core mechanisms are basically working at this point, and we're figuring out like how to package this up into the first sort of like consumer facing things that give people a rough idea of what this kind of system could feel like.
Got it. So just to go back, you were talking about distribution channels and things of that nature. So can you just give me some examples of like, you were talking about how we need to think about this. Give me some just examples for myself and for maybe other people that are
listening. The App Store is one of the largest software distribution channels today. And the software that gets distributed via the App Store must abide by the rules of that distribution channel, right? Like the thing that makes a distribution channel is that the products launching through that have to, bend themselves to the will of the channel. Like the channel does not change itself because of some product. Craigslist, email, these were all or are still distribution channels.
So it's just a quick question, which is like, to go back to the model of like, hey, I have some software on my server, pay me and you can use it, right? Which is the sort of classic SaaS thing. Is then would you say that what is the channel there? It's kind of an interesting question.
Internet was
the channel,
just
the internet is So which is interesting because it like actually enforces relatively few constraints. The channel itself, when compared with like the App Store or things of that nature. So it's interesting to think like, it's kind of like a clear channel, if you will, in some ways.
Yeah, it certainly started that way. I would argue over time, it became sort of balkanized and is not it's not so easy anymore. And I think that presents an opening for an ecosystem like us to
100%
outcompete in that way.
Yeah. Very interesting. So in terms of can you be a little bit more concrete in terms of what the, but still at a high level, concrete and high, of what the solution is, and how, and especially how blockchain relates to this, because it's sort of like, I think a lot of people also just don't understand the relationship between Urbit and blockchains currently and how that could be different, So if you could, explain that.
Yep. So we're at a high level, we are using NFTs as both the monetization and distribution channel for software running on Urbit.
Okay.
So blockchains are global systems. They're permissionless. They have many different sort of front end clients. So if one isn't doing what you want it to do, you have the option to go use others. And so it's very similar to those early internet days where the cost of distributing something through that medium was quite low.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchains are even better though, because they have monetization built into them from the outset, and they have the most just insanely powerful monetization like mechanisms that I've ever seen. My background's like, I'm like a marketplace guy. Like I started my career off in normal Web 2, like e-commerce, 3-sided marketplace style companies.
Mm-hmm.
And the toys that you have in blockchain to monetize NFTs in particular, to do sort of automated payment flows, to do auction mechanics, to do like automated it's just like, it's mind blowing how much has been created in the last couple of years here. And unfortunately, like that piece of the technology has been overshadowed by just like the shitcoinery that's gone on, and the like absurd prices that JPEGs have been selling for. But the actual innovation there is like astonishing. And we're basically encoding access to software or data running on Urbit as an NFT. And then when that NFT is minted or transferred around, the code or the state is replicated across the Urbit nodes that are associated with the wallet that owns the NFT. Like that, that's sort of the high level. So to give you just a sense of like a user flow here, you come to OpenSea, you buy an NFT that says like, it's the talk NFT. It gives you access to talk. And when you buy it, we generate a redirect link for you. You click on it, you sign a challenge message via MetaMask or whatever wallet you're using. And then assuming that wallet owns the NFT and also owns the azimuth point, then we automatically log you into that experience. So it's like you can go to NFT it's not like, you actually can now go to NFT marketplaces and buy an NFT that represents user-owned, self-sovereign, peer-to-peer software.
Amazing. So in some ways, we've gone full circle. So like, but and then now like we have a virtual Best Buy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like we're back to the CD day. You've got like a digital CD now, and you can if you want to be a pirate and burn a copy and give it to someone without anyone else knowing, you can do that. If you want to play the game for a while and then get sick of it and resell it, you can do that. And it's all right. Like the protocol runs on Urbit. So once you have our protocol running on Urbit, you're like, we're kind of out of the picture if you don't want us there. I think there's like a bunch of things that we're going to try and provide to make this a very compelling, like we want to be basically a compelling service provider within this world. But if you want to go opt into something else, it's like all your own code at this point, and the monetization stuff's all on chain. So you can fork it or choose a sort of different chain or different set of contracts to interact with. So that's the way, coming back to this conversation around incentivizing open source software, like this is sort of the core kernel of an idea that I think will eventually get us to that world.
Interesting. And so yeah, I mean, I think that like and I'm asking you just to kind of reorganize the thing you've said, which like I was thinking, like, what is the benefit for the software creator / distributor, or just let's call it creator in general, right? Because this would apply equally to what we now consider to be, it really blurs the line between like NFT creator type thing and developer, right? That kind of all be creators, which I think is actually, by the way, I'll come back to this, but I think that's a really powerful thing that's very Urbit-y.
Yep.
And then the other thing is that there are people, of course, who are just consumers of this stuff or collectors of it. And so can you kind of just be like, okay, what's the benefit for creators and what's the benefit for collectors / consumers?
Yep. So taking creators first, let's imagine someone that wants to develop a very sort of straightforward HTML5 game today. Their options for distributing that game that they've made is basically like itch.io or Crazy Games. And it like sucks. It's not a good experience trying to make money or find fans from these games. You basically only have ad revenue as a potential way. So okay, in a world where you're instead using Urbit and Vaporware, you can be a developer anywhere in the world, and all that you need to distribute your software globally is know how to write code and then have a wallet. And doing that, you can write your code, create an NFT, and then people can buy that NFT for whatever absurd price you want globally from day one.
Yeah.
And you don't need a company. You don't need, sort of maximally, you don't even need approval from everyone. You can just tell people that this is what you're doing and use the Urbit protocol that we've developed to do it. And so there's no overhead to getting started as a developer at that point. Like you have to deploy a contract, you have to market it, and that's it. Which is extreme level of efficiency, capital efficiency compared to what people are doing today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second benefit here is that you can develop software that would be illegal to offer as a centralized service. There are lots of things that individual people can opt into doing with each other that is perfectly legal, but that is illegal to mediate as a centralized company. And so developers, because their users will be operating their own nodes running this software, again, like they're not offering this service, they're just providing the code that executes the service. That means that you can write categories of software that otherwise would not be possible to write. And that's just, that's not even talking about the peer-to-peer stuff that Urbit has going on that we think is very interesting.
Well, I would say, I mean, it's interesting that there's the legality, but then there's also just like the kind of like, I don't know what you would call it, like chilling effect. I mean, it's like
it's the uncertainty. It's the risk that you have to take on.
Yeah, and it's sort of one of these things where it's like those things do, and I think also just like the prospect of creating a company, being centralized, all this stuff. It's like it ends up shaping the software that's written, if that makes sense. Like it's sort of like
that's correct.
Because you have to think about this stuff. So it's like legality is almost like the most obvious thing, but there's all these kind of more subtle ways that the status quo kind of shapes software, creative software as well. Just like, what games get made, what games don't get made, what art gets made, what this and that. And I think
it also just precludes the type of person who can participate in this market.
Yes.
Like there are huge parts of the world that could not go through the effort of getting a corporation started and meeting like all of these sort of nation state requirements, regulatory requirements to like use the systems of distribution as they currently are. Like, are you gonna get a merchant account? Like what are you actually do? Like what do you actually have to do to like process meaningful transactions? Like maybe you're like a kid in India with an incredible idea for an app, but if you started making money, it would be a nightmare actually.
More
so
trouble.
I think you're right I think you're right that there is like a unseen sort of chilling effect that this has had on software development.
One thing I was gonna ask you is, and I'm not sure if all Urbit people are obsessed with Pinboard, but I am personally obsessed with Pinboard. Because are you familiar with Pinboard, Chase?
I have no idea what that is.
Oh my lords! Okay, you got to work this into the pitch. It'll appeal to like 6 people apparently. But literally tens of people. But Pinboard is a God. Who remembers delicious? It was like del.ic whatever. And it was a social bookmarking app. And it's just absolutely amazing app. Back in the kind of early heady days of the beginnings of Web 2, and it was like you basically could it was very slick where you could make bookmarks and you could then share lists of, and categorize them and make some of them public and some of them private. So like I could follow, Roslet Tanner has, for example, a flan blog where she posts about her favorite flans, and like I would subscribe to her flan list, her Mexican restaurant, Comida Mexicana list. So you could do this in this sort of very interesting, like low effort user generated content way, but it was just links, just bookmarks.
Yeah.
So brilliant idea. Delicious. Pinboard started as, I think, as kind of like a ripoff, or I don't know, there's some open source version of Delicious. And Delicious like really fell on hard times, and Pinboard bought it actually. And it just basically provides this this one very good service, right? But the guy who runs it is something of a folk hero in that he is very explicit that he's like, I only want a few thousand users. Like I don't want a lot of users. I design this business as an actual lifestyle business. I want as many users as I can comfortably support, just me. I don't want to hire people. And I'm a member, and it's like, you file a bug or whatever, and it's like he answers it and it fixes it later that day type thing. It's amazing. And so the quality of software is much higher.
It's very quiet, right? It's
yeah, it's simple because it's like you just pay him for the service, right? There's no weird shit. There's no ads. There's no redesigns because some designer is bored and wants to change where all the buttons are and stuff. And so, but it's interesting because he did this thing where it was initially very cheap, but then it gets more and more expensive every user that joins, because he's like, I don't actually want a lot of users. And I've thought about that a lot. It's kind of like what's it called? Like very reverse Dutch auction, whatever. There's one of these things, right? And it's like, I think there's a lot of different mechanisms for monetizing. I mean, using monetization, I think in the exact way you're talking about, that's kind of like more new, right? That you could do all this wacky shit with NFTs and stuff. And you could auction off, access to your software. You can do all this stuff. And I think it's like that in and of itself could also stimulate a lot of different, I think not only just software, but different lifestyles of the developers. I think the Pinboard model actually appeals to a lot of developers because they just want to work. They just want to do their thing.
And for very good reason. Like it's when you take a step back and you think about the way that we modify our homes or our cars or these other physical objects in our life, software does not work that way. Like the cost, the capital cost of producing software and maintaining it over time is still so high that we're more than 20 years into the 21st century and we still don't have sort of family software. What the fuck is going on? This is insane. We have been developing software for 70 plus years, and we still don't have a model that is affordable enough that we can have sort of customized family software.
Well, it's also it seems like it's gone backwards even in my lifetime, and I think that's because it has become dominated by the method of financing. So it's sort of like anything that's not going to have the potential of having a TAM of every human on Earth. It's like they don't even. Why bother, right? Because you can't raise money. You can't this, you can't that. So it's like it doesn't even get off the ground. And so I do think it's like there's something to be said. I think the creative possibilities opened up by what you guys are doing is and that's what I was saying before. It's like I think that if I record this, my prediction is that basically this idea of the creative NFT digital creative person, it's like developers belong in that category, and that's not their self-image a lot of times, but I think it's that is the rise of the kind of understanding developers as creators in a sort of creator economy type sense is going to be like one of the main things that Urbit, and I think Urbit with Vaporware in particular, can offer. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that, you know, once you get past the ape images, there's a lot of this happening in NFTs already. Like the actual pieces of the NFT industry that are interesting are these on-chain mechanisms that drive sort of intentional social behavior. And the developers, the teams putting these things together are doing it consciously. Like they are playing with human they're playing with incentives to drive human behavior in a way that they want. And we're like very early days. And so the most basic versions look like just encouraging people to like pump their own bags, but it's gotten much more sophisticated than that in the last year. And it's hard to see if you just take a like surface level sort of approach to the NFT industry. But once you actually dive into some of the things that they're doing and the impact that it has on the base of people holding that asset, like you can start to see that these are very early prototypes of the kinds of things that we'll be able to build at scale in the future. And it's very creative work. Like you're no longer just like sitting down in front of a Jira table, like knocking through your task list, right? Like it combines technology and culture and human behavior in a very new way.
Yeah. So okay. So to that end, like, what are your, in terms of this kind of, let's just say NFT world, or whatever we want to call this? But I think these are all speedily just mixing together, right? So it's like in this world, like, what do you think are the projects that you find compelling that you think you'd like Vapor to work with?
I think that these experiments around like very sticky like network community design, where the tokens are a bit of a like they're a skin in the game mechanism. Like they signal to the other people participating in this that like you've put some amount of stake into this thing, and then you participate in sort of the co-creation of cultural elements, memes, posts, in-person events. Like I think that feels more like the thing that I had in mind when I first started learning about DAOs. Like, oh, it's this like incentivized group of people that are all aimed in roughly the same direction, but are like performing their own little experiments at the same time. So I find that stuff very interesting. Like, frankly, I think the Milady project is probably like a magnitude of order more complex and interesting along this axis than any other project that I'm acquainted with. I think that people kind of underestimate some of the thought that has gone into what they're doing. And I think if you spend more time sort of understanding the financialization combined with the like cultural elements of it, it's very interesting. So I think that stuff is cool. I'm also just excited about like helping Urbit developers monetize software that they're already making. Like we've produced a game for Urbit that we call Tharsis, and we have monetized this via an NFT. So you can come to our minting page, buy this NFT, and then we automatically transfer the software to you.
Where is that page, by the way?
It's on.
Can you divulge?
Yeah, can I put a message in here? No, there's no.
I think you can reply to the space. I think I don't know. I'm confused on. Maybe the bottom right of the app thing. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to come on here and pump these bags. It's
Tharsis, THARSIS, tharsis.vaporware.network. And you can mint there. Beautiful. And when you mint that, this is a client server game. You can either choose to just be a client and play on one of your friends' servers, or if you want to start your own server, invite people to a game, you can do that too. You get both of them. It's open source software. We encourage you to hack it and mod it and make it do things that it wasn't originally intended to do. And we're thinking about how to sort of incentivize some of that behavior in the future as well. So that's like the other category that I'm very excited about. And we're building other kinds of consumer applications internally now that we think sort of demonstrate this and hopefully demonstrate some of the other ways of combining Urbit and like crypto incentives.
Yeah. I think there's definitely, I agree with you that there's kind of like a lot of learnings to be gotten from the whole Remelia, the what they've done, like that I think are going to be. I think it's like it's impossible to deny that they've done it the best, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways.
I think that they've done very innovative things. Yeah. I absolutely
and I
agree.
I think it's one of those things where I think some of it was on purpose and some of it wasn't, which it doesn't really matter which one is which, But I do think
many such cases in history.
Yeah, exactly. It's like being accidentally right is still works. It's not like less points. But I think it's taking a while, and it's going to take a while for people to kind of like internalize those lessons. And I think there's a lot to be done. So it's like I do think that all the big projects in the future are going to look like that in some way, and I think there's but it's like I think a lot of it's kind of like there are some bands, and I always forget what people would use as an example, but it's like there are bands where it's like they spawn all kinds of different genres, right, that basically imitate one of their things, right? So it's like someone imitates the drums of Led Zeppelin and someone else imitates the vocals of Led Zeppelin, right? It's like I feel like I'm sounding like a very big Remelia simp. I'm actually a moderate simp, but it's like there's like a thing where it's like every element of what they've done can kind of maybe be used by other projects in different ways, and I think that's like and I think that, but I think Vaporware is going to make some of what they wanted to do even more so in some ways.
I think the idea of being able to release software to people in your community who are in your community because there's cryptographic evidence of it, like that just feels like a very exciting new thing that has been unlocked with Urbit. And it's like open source software. So if you're a project that is already invested in sort of this like copyleft ethos, you're aligned there. I think it's very exciting. I also just think the idea of like taking this NFT mechanism that has been over the last 2 years, expanded and built on in the DeFi space, just like these absurd financial tools that have been made to do different things with them, like taking that like form and attaching running software to it is a fucking nutty idea. Like imagine Bored Apes, but instead of just a JPEG, you have like encrypted, crazy software doing like valuable shit behind the scenes, and then you plug that into the DeFi machine that's been created. Just seems like it seems like something that traders will get excited about.
Yeah, 100%. That's very.
I think what's really interesting to me that Vaporware is doing is sort of, I don't know if democratizing is the right word, but I just like, the possibility that it opens up to all these people. You guys were talking before about sort of like the incredibly high barrier into, getting things done, the administrative barrier or the bureaucratic barrier, like seeing that kind of like go away and allowing sort of like, creative nobodies to get things out into the world is really interesting to me. And I'm looking forward to seeing, like what happens. I think, sometimes the most creative stuff we never see because there's just such a barrier in this stupid, ridiculous world that we have created.
Well,
hey, Poldeck.
Yeah.
Should we give people a chance to maybe chat a little bit and ask some questions?
Let's do it. I'm going to mute myself because apparently I can't stop talking. I have some sort of problem.
Illness.
But those of you who are listening, if you have questions, go ahead and request to speak. That's how it works. Let's see. If not, I'm just going to continue talking. You better watch out. Someone was asking earlier. See, Roslet, now you're.
Now look.
Well, I've beaten them into submission. They're just like Jesus.
Everyone's catatonic.
Which I understand. You know, it's like I understand.
No,
many
it's
such
a
cases.
good conversation. We just promised ourselves we would allow some time.
We did.
Questions,
we did. But if they're not going to take us up, it's like, what can I do? I can lead a tweet. Lead it to fuck them, exactly. This is why our audience
very aggressive very quickly.
This is why our audience loves us, Roslet Tanner. But what I was gonna ask about is like, do you think that so one thing that here we go. Logan is requesting to speak. Hold on, I'll hold my question. Let's see. Logan, you are now there. Speak or forever hold your whatever.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes. What's up?
Well, it's less a question than a thought. The topic of like the differences or the relationship between Urbit and crypto came up a little earlier. And I wanted to share, I'm coming from Web3. I'm pretty fresh into Urbit. And something that struck me as interesting, I was at Reassembly with the Vaporware team there. And on Web3, you are using a system of decentralized nodes, but the user experience, even for a developer, is not that you are a node on the network, really. You leverage Web3 and Ethereum and the fact that it's decentralized, but what you get is sort of a centralized source of truth, really. That's what you want to get from Ethereum. What is the state of this contract? Who owns this NFT? And what's interesting about Urbit, as I get to know it, is that you actually have the experience of being a node on the network. The way that groups work and the way that pals work, rumors especially is a good example of this. You really get that sense of being a node on the network. And there's something that's extremely exciting about that. So that was just the thought I wanted to share when comparing these two systems.
And I'm one thing that's interesting about that is that, like, as everyone who's ever used Urbit and had to give it a minute, right, is that like being a node on a network is a different experience, even in the best of scenarios, than being someone who logs into a website,
Right.
So it's kind of like interesting to think about how to design that, like, to be interesting and enjoyable and not just confusing and frustrating, which is a design problem.
Well, there's already something fun about it. I mean, I've been sort of calling it the dark forest feeling. The fact that there is no global list of apps, and I kind of have to find out, what the cool things are through friends. Just the experience, like I said, of using rumors is quite fun. So there's definitely like already.
I'm glad it resonates.
Almost accidentally, it's already fun being in the dark forest of Urbit, and it just seems like we're right at the door of exposing that in a more explicit way that speaks to people that aren't technical. I'm a technical guy, so I get into it and I kind of immediately see that something's different, and I don't know the extent to which that will easily translate to non-technical users, but maybe it already does to some extent. But if not, I think we're just so close to getting there. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one of the things that's cool about Vapor, and Chase, maybe you have some thoughts on this, is that, or like just like the NFT boom in general, is that like there's all these users now who like have some technical, probably just they acquired it through excitement, maybe even to like to learn about crypto, learn about NFTs, all this stuff. And that's me. But that profile of user has like grown quite a bit. It's brought a lot of people kind of into that world to where they maybe can like be more appreciative or more, I don't want to, that sounds, pompous, but you know what I mean? Like where it's more legible
there's
to
some,
them.
Yeah, there's some level of background that you, at this stage at least, I think you have to have in like decentralized like decentralization projects in order to get this. But I think if you meet that sort of minimum barrier, like interacting with Urbit feels qualitatively different already. Like already there's something about it that feels qualitatively different. And I think you're right that people that have been interacting with dApps that are doing token swaps and doing NFT things, I think that they have met that like minimum already. And they're also very comfortable with kind of strange UX experiences and having to learn new technology in a way that most computer users today are not. You know, if you go back to the 90s and you were using a computer every day, it was like, okay, you understood something about that computer. Like you understood that sometimes it didn't work exactly right and you'd have to go figure out like a workaround. That's like largely not the case for most people anymore. But in blockchain, that is the case almost every single time you interact with the thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's to benefit for us. Like these are people with capital that are interested in new technology, that have sort of the patience to learn and play with new things. And if we can deliver content to them using this native thing that they're already familiar with, and offer them something sort of like very differentiated compared to other projects, I think that will be very successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, Sagrim Savluk is being coy in this space here, but he's brought up a really interesting point in the replies here about the Pokemon thing. Sagrim, do you want to expand on that? The Pokemon, it might be at the browser, many such cases. But what he says is, let's see. Let me read it here. One thing to underscore: developers. Oh, you can go. You could go ahead. You're probably familiar
so
with this.
Just to expand on this, right? What we're doing is not just like I've been talking about software distribution here as NFTs, but we actually have a fully general framework such that you can distribute state or subscriptions, other kinds of things via the NFT as well. And so we're really able to, like, we effectively create a token bound namespace within Urbit, and you can shove all kinds of different shit in that namespace and then monetize it via the NFT. And so this idea of
NFTs is just probably
stateful NFTs. Yep. Yeah. And so imagine buying an untrained Pokemon. You train it by running software on your Urbit, and when you go to sell it, you're not just selling whatever that piece of code was that defined the Pokemon game, but you're selling effectively like your Pokemon's event log. And that is like net new behavior for NFTs. There's no other system that provides that functionality. And you attach a zero knowledge proof to that, and it starts to get very interesting.
So it opens up the whole new job possibilities of being a professional Pokemon trainer. You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
You could just buy sort of low value. I wish I could rattle off the Pokemon names. They would be much more impressive here, but I don't know them. But it's like you could buy a Squirtle, and you could level them up to a Charizard. No, that's a different thing. And then sell them, right? Blastoise. There we go. Which is actually a very interesting idea, right? Like that there could be this kind of like middle tier value add thing, which is like, as far as I know, doesn't exist. There's no like, maybe there are Farmville farmers for hire. I don't know, but it's an interesting.
Yeah, there certainly are, but I think the sort of more interesting thing is that probably these massively produced trained Pokemon aren't that interesting or valuable. But what you might pay a lot for is like Poldex Pikachu that he mistreated it and then had a stern talking to from his mom and like changed his ways, and now they have a great relationship. But Poldeck doesn't have he's in Twitter Spaces all day. He can't
exactly.
He doesn't have time to train anymore, so he's selling his Pikachu. And like, okay, now it's interesting. Now it's like a real unique item that came from this person that it has a history with, and I would like to pay for that, and I would pay more for that because I think it's more interesting.
So I have an idea that anyone on this space is free to steal, which is that my son just bought a Gigapet, right? He's like, I want a Gigapet, which is, for those youngins, is basically the original version of it's like the most lo-fi Pokemon that can exist. And I'm like, you could literally just make Vaporware Gigapets, right? It's like it would just be like, and you should make it exactly like with the little like egg shape like key fob thing. This is a billion, least a zillion dollar, probably gajillion dollar idea there. Okay, it looks like Sogrim has joined us. Sogrim, did we straw man your point, or do you have anything else to say about?
Yeah, I figured out my browser stuff. Yeah, you steel manned it. That was great.
Oh, perfect.
And I mean, the Pokemon thing is fun, obviously, but if you think about the same kind of concept in something more useful, some spreadsheet app that's stuffed with a bunch of alpha that's also distributed alongside some crypto trading app that is kind of riced up to be able to like do the stuff that you need to do, plus permissions to certain groups and networks that is where all the good information is. Like, you could just imagine some ecosystem of apps and compositions that are packaged up and sold, and works like the Pokemon, but does more than fights Bulbasaurs.
That's a really great. I also extreme props for the use of riced up. I haven't heard that term in a long time. Do you know where that term comes from?
It is on Netflix.
It is on Netflix. From Cars. The reason that comes to mind for me is because I've spent so many hours customizing my Linux desktop that I would happily have paid hundreds or thousands of dollars for someone else who just did it for me.
For someone else. Well, it's funny because what's funny about that term is that it comes from like putting like LED lights under your Camry, but then became for some reason the term for it came from like customizing rice rockets, right? The somewhat pejorative term for those kinds of cars, and then it became the term for customizing your desktop. I don't know why. It's interesting anthropology there, but I love that term. But that's a great point. Like in terms of, because I thought this quite a bit. Like the market on just information market, data markets, right? Paying for insights into things. This is actually probably, it's like the finance industry are the most serious users of computers on earth, right? The rest of this shit just pales in, it's like comparison. And, they basically use Excel and proprietary data sets that they pay a lot of money for, right? To do a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting to think that, it's like the stuff that's possible. Yeah. Like if you can sell a data set and transformations of that data set, like that's a whole new world in some ways.
Yep. The other interesting thing here that we're doing is, right, like NFTs now can have smart contract wallets bound to them. This is via a new ERC 6551. Developed by the team behind like CryptoKitties, started Dapper Lab. So very seriously pushing it, and it's incredibly useful because then you can have NFTs that own other NFTs, and if these NFTs are plugins or pieces of software or content to be exposed within a piece of software, this layering starts to make a lot of sense. And you could imagine having a Pokedex where the Pokedex is an NFT that has an account bound to it, and that account owns all of the Pokemon inside of it, and then you can sell your Pokedex.
So you can do dependency management, basically.
You can do dependency management. Yeah,
that's pretty fucking wacky, actually. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we want to get to, where as a developer you can package up your libraries and your tooling and use sort of the on-chain portion as package management, as like, cryptographic proof that this person generated this hash based off of the code that's available on Urbit, and then kind of build a system out of that. And we think it's possible to monetize that system.
That's amazing.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm sold. I'm sold. Okay. Very nice. Well, we've come to kind of the end of our time here. So unless, Roslet, do you have any closing thoughts? This is your monologue moment.
No,
when you look at this camera.
I enjoyed the talk very much. Thank you.
I enjoyed the talk very much as well. Thank you guys for having us.
I also enjoyed the talk. I wanted to, but Razatan, I know I'm harping on this flan thing, but flan is funny, and I think it's like the flan NFT series is also great. I think this is great. This is
I've realized that this is just what a missed opportunity to name our company Flan. FLON.
It really is a great word. It's fun to say, which is how I make almost all my decisions, is based on the amusingness of the word itself.
Could do worse than that.
I know there's just a slight hint of ridicule in Poldeck's tone, but I actually, it is my passion project, and I appreciate that you appreciate.
I represent that comment. No, I think I represent that statement. No, but I honestly think that like imagine a NFT series, just pictures of flan. This is great, honestly. Roslet Tanner, collab, Vaporware.
I love it.
We gotta shill. We gotta dance our way to the ghetto. We gotta.
Yeah, love it. We're here for it.
Chance.
I mean, honestly, flan is mostly about aesthetics. So
that's what I mean.
Yes, I know. I agree with you. But there's a lot more beneath the surface. Like, it's a complicated thing. It's actually a deep subject. So I agree. I think we should be collaborating. I just hope no one steals my idea. And
no one can do it like you do.
Looking forward to it. That's true.
All right. It was great talking to you guys. So those of you that were listening, we're doing this pretty much every week with all the participants in UAC, which is the Urbit Accelerator. So we'll have another one next Tuesday, guest TBA. But we're going to be doing them basically from now until Urbit Assembly, which will be in Lisbon from basically at the end of October. So October 28th and 29th, to be followed by Urbit Week Lisboa, where Urbit does the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, so hope to see you all there. Take it easy.
Bye.